Look, listen. I know you're random, right? But just listen. Just hear me for a minute. Just listen for a minute. All right? Just listen. Okay, guys. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is going to be episode 3. I hope you can hear that the quality is a lot better this time. I did some tinkering with my setup, moved around some stuff, and I'm getting a lot better sound. And let's hope that this one is a lot clearer. And let's shoot for this episode 3. So episode 3 is not going to be anything heavy. I gave you a heavy episode 2. And I promised that I will do some DIY. I'm going to do a DIY today, but it's not going to be visual. It's going to be audio. And so I'm going to give you some background information about it first and why I can give you the information I'm going to share with you. My DIY today is going to be about explaining what is a fire, how a fire starts, and how to safely out fires, or just to give you the information so you can avoid having a fire. You could identify what type of fire you come in contact with if you ever come into contact with one, and the best way to treat the fire if you have to. Now, I must say that at the end of this episode, the idea is not for you to go randomly out to fight fires or look for fires to fight or even start fires to fight them. I always will advocate, if there's a fire and it's beyond your control, please, 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 311 is the Barbados Fire Service. If it is a situation where you are in danger, the scale is always life and then property. So we save life first and then property afterwards. Now, why am I going to talk to you about firefighting? Or why am I going to talk to you about the elements of fire? And who am I to do that? So let me say that I have been trained, or I have received a number of training. And my first initial training in firefighting was at the Barbados Coast Guard. Then I received official certified training by the Barbados Fire Service in firefighting, hazard materials, building inspection, and that allowed me to receive some training by a UN organization called the OPCW, which is the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Warfare Materials. I received a basic certificate in search and rescue, chemical, biological, nuclear, and explosive warfare. I also received an advanced certificate in the same thing, intermediate, advanced, and I also did a specialization in chain of custody of evidence and handling of hazardous material, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive. Also, I was trained in the reduction of cross-contamination as well, of handling hazardous and dangerous materials. So all of this training is inclusive of firefighting, is inclusive of first aid, is inclusive of urban search and rescue, is also inclusive of incident command, and inclusive of mass casualty management. They also have a certification from, two certifications, one from FEMA, both from FEMA in mass casualty management and also in incident command. And they also have a certification from PAHO in incident command and mass casualty management. So today I'm going to do something very light because I think it's very important that we as individuals living in homes, whether it be renting or your own home, that we have some idea of what is a fire, how it starts, how to prevent it, how to stop it. Knowledge is the first step to empower you, empower yourself, empower the people around you. And I believe that knowledge is not mine, is not yours, is all of ours. So if I have it, I need to share it. Having it and not using it effectively is a waste of time. Okay, so first, let me start off with the old and bring it to the new. Oh, so I want you to picture a triangle, normal triangle, 3 equal sides. And the old theory was something called the fire triangle. And the each side of this triangle represents something. One side is fuel, the next side is oxygen, and the next side is heat. So the reasoning was, the theory was, is that these 3 components are necessary to start, sustain, and maintain a fire. But someone decided, you know what, that is technically not absolutely correct, because I could have a lighter in my hand and I could light it. I could have a can of gasoline in the next hand, and there's oxygen all around me, and that will not start a fire. So that sparked the theory of the fire tetrahydrogen. So the fire tetrahydrogen is like a application added on to the fire triangle, and it says that yes, you need heat, yes, you need fuel, and yes, you need oxygen to start a fire, but you also need something, a chemical chain reaction. This chemical chain reaction is necessary to start a fire, and these 3 elements together will sustain that fire. So that's the first part, understanding that for a fire to exist, for a fire to start, and for a fire to maintain, it needs these 4 elements. It needs fuel, it needs oxygen, it needs heat, and it needs some sort of chain reaction to start and maintain a fire. That being said, it's also true that if you remove one of these elements, then a fire cannot maintain. So if you remove oxygen from the equation, it cannot sustain. If you remove the heat, it cannot sustain. And if you remove the fuel, a fire cannot sustain. So let's talk about what is a fuel. Heat is self-explanatory. We're going to talk about what is a fuel, and we're going to talk about oxygen. Yes, oxygen, O2, is self-explanatory, but it's something I need to explain a little bit more about it. Now, there are different classes of fire, and different countries or different organizations class them differently, but generally, the class is A, B, C, D, and K, or Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Kilo. A lot of people don't use Echo or E, but we generally in Barbados, we use A, B, C, D, and K generally, right? And knowing the classes of fire helps you to understand what type of fire it is and then how to treat to it. So I'm going to start off with A, the type of fire, Alpha, which is an ordinary combustion fire, which is like the burning of paper, wood, material. These fires usually leave ash or gray or dark cloud, or white cloud. So if you burn paper, you will see that it always comes up into ash, or you have a little white smoke or a light little gray smoke. That's the class A fire. After I give the classes, I'm also going to explain how to fight the fires as well, right? The next class of fire is Bravo or B. And I always remember them by using the letter. So when you think B, I think bottles. So things you store in bottles or cans. So like grease, paint, oil, or solvents. Any flammable liquid is considered a Bravo or a B class fire. The next one is C or Charlie, which is live electrical fires. So I always say C and think circuits. So C, circuits, electrical fires. So electrical panels, you have electrical fire in a car that starts from electrical fire. Usually car fires start from electrical fires. Usually any fire caused by wiring. electrical wiring. And then there's D as in Delta, dog, D. So D class fires are metal fires. So fires that start or are maintained by the fuel being metal. The most dangerous metal fire I can think of right now, off the top of my head, is magnesium. A magnesium fire is extremely dangerous. A few decades ago, there was a car crash at a car racing event, and one of the metals that were burning was magnesium. Magnesium is a very volatile metal. The hotter it gets, it has these small explosions, and you can't fight a magnesium fire normally using normal extinguishers. But also fires, like instance aluminum, any types of metals that are burning, would classify as a D or Delta class fire. And then K, it might sound strange, but K is any fire that starts as a cause of cooking equipment, cooking gases, and that sort of stuff. K, so you think K, cooking, you was frying bakes and you forget to turn off your stove, and you come back and see your frying pan full of flames. That would be called classed as a K type fire. Now, there are also different types of extinguishers, and it's important that people understand the extinguishers and what their uses are, and how to use them. So everything I'm going to give you is is audio, so you won't be able to see, but you can listen. So there are many different types of fire extinguishers, and there are specific ones for specific things. But what you will find generally are the ABCs extinguishers, where those ABC stands for the types of fire. So use A for class A, B for class B, C for class C. So Alpha Bravo Charlie, that type of extinguisher fights that type of fire. So there are fire extinguishers that are just water. There are fire extinguishers that are just water, or you can just use normal water. And you can use normal water to fight A class fires. So the same fires that you fight with wood, the same fires you see with wood or paper burning, you will use a fire. So you see there's a house burning, you will see that the fire tender comes, and the fire tender uses water. There's also a foam spray extinguisher. Foam spray extinguishers are used to fight class A and class B fires. So remember, A is wood, organic material, anything that leaves ash or a white smoke. And we know that Bravo bottles, fuels and liquids, as what you use that foam spray for. The ABC I mentioned before will fight class A. B, C is this rule of thumb. If you have electrical fire, the first step is to cut off the source of electricity, which is the fuel. So if the fire was caused by an electrical breaker, you turn off the main on the outside. If there's a fire on the inside of the house caused by a plug, you go to the breaker and you turn off the breaker. And then once you have done that successfully and safely, then you treat the fire like if it was a class A fire. So for that reason, the ABC will also work for electrical fires. Now there's also carbon dioxide fire extinguishers, and they're used to fight electrical fires, and they're also used to fight flammable liquids. And there's a science behind that, and I won't get into that because it's a bit deeper. I just want to keep this on the surface. And then there are wet chemical extinguishers that will fight class A fires, and also class K fires. Remember, K is for cooking fires that happen in the kitchen. And there's a sense behind that as well. The wet chemical or foam, it actually cuts off the ingress of oxygen, and it starves the fire, so it dies down. So I gave you the explanation of how a fire starts, what starts a fire and maintains a fire, the elements of a fire. I gave you the classes of fire. and they give you some of the extinguishers that you will find everyday use, whether it be if you're in the store, if you're at home. It's always a good idea to keep a fire extinguisher at home or in your car. We're going to talk a little bit more about the fire. So you come home, you're cooking, and you leave the stove on, and some of the grease from whatever you were frying or something spill over, and it catches on fire. Now, if it is a situation where you are safe and you can safely do this, I would suggest you do it. So the first step would be, one, because it's oil, never, ever, ever use water on oil. Never use water on chemical fires. And some people might say, I've seen people do that, but there's a science behind fighting chemical fires with water, and you have to be an expert to do that. Something called penciling, but the average person will never know how to do that. It's a specialist training that's needed for that. Barbados Fire Service are awesomely trained in that area. But remember, just picture that triangle, that fire triangle. So the three elements that need to sustain the fire after it's already started is heat, oxygen, and fuel. Now, the first thing to do is to cut off the oxygen. That's the easiest thing and the safest thing. So if you have a big enough pan or saucepan cover to cover that oil, you put that over it. It does two things. It stops the oil from splattering all over the place, which makes it even more dangerous and could cause spreading. And it also strangles the fire. It eliminates that oxygen, and it will eventually die down. The second step is, if you can safely do it, is to turn off the stove. So what you've done now is that you've eliminated two things. You've eliminated the oxygen, and you've also eliminated the heat, the source. So you've removed two characteristics or two elements of the fire. And before you do the cleanup, you just let everything cool down. You open the windows and vent the house. Make sure you're safe. If you come into a situation where it is very big and out of control, safety first. Call the Barbados Fire Service. Call the Barbados Fire Service. If you can't do that, get to safety, get to a neighbor, and tell your neighbor, please call the fire service. I'm only talking about if this situation is small and can be controlled at the point in time, then you can take these steps to do that. There are some beautiful videos on YouTube from the National Fire and Protection Agency. They show you how to use fire extinguishers. They show you how fires work. They show you the safe and correct way to treat the fires. It's very easy. Go on YouTube and take a look at those things. I just want you to get an idea of what to do. Now, in kitchens, more commercial kitchens like in restaurants, there's a requirement to have extinguishers, and there's a requirement to have something called a fire blanket. So if you're at work and you see this small little container on the wall, mounted on the wall close to the stoves, and it looks like a towel. It's not a towel. You pull that out and you put that over the fire if it's a grease fire, and that eliminates the oxygen. Then you go to some control valve and you turn off the fuel, which also eliminates the heat, and you have just killed the fire. Remember, it's very important to be safe and maintain safety at all times. If it's a situation you cannot control, there's no one around to help you. Remember, safety first. Get the nearest phone, call the fire service, and get the safety. If you're in the environment and you can smell gas, don't panic. Get to safety, call the fire service. They know exactly what to do. They are very well trained. The Barbados Fire Service, and that number is 311. So let's say you're driving your car, you smell smoke, you pull over, and there's a fire, and you don't have a fire extinguisher. The only thing to do in that situation is to get upwind from the fire. Upwind means if the wind is coming from the north and your car you go to the north. You go to the direction the wind is coming from, because you are out of danger from smoke inhalation, and you want to breathe in all of that smoke from the fire. So you go in the direction that the wind is coming from. Once you can safely do that, and you call for assistance or the fire service. If you do have an extinguisher and the fire is on your hood, is under the hood, please do not open the hood, because when you do that, you directly introduce oxygen. And once you introduce oxygen, then there's a possibility that the flame is going to get a lot bigger. You can also you can safely try to out the fire by using the grill where in front of the car or under one of the wheels. You try to use the extinguisher, and that extinguisher would be a powder or dry powder extinguisher. And you could also use the ABC if you have one in your car. Once it's not a massive fire and the whole car is not on flames, then it becomes a class D fire. It's a metal burning. Right? I mentioned the electrical already. If you have a fire starting by a plug, you go to the breaker, you turn off the breaker safely, you treat the fire as a class A fire. If the fire is at the breaker itself, then you go on the outside where the meter is, the electrical meter is, there's another breaker there, the main breaker, you turn that off. And you want to do one or two things. You either treat it as a class A fire, or you call the fire service if it's out of your control. Or you know what? Do both. It's better safe than sorry, because you may think the fire is over because it's electrical and you don't see any flames, but it could be burning throughout the wiring. The fire service will come and do their inspection, make sure it's all safe, and then tell you what to do from there or who to contact from there. All right, so a recap is going to be short. Fire tetrahydrogen, which is the advanced fire triangle, the fire triangle on steroids. Whereas the fire triangle is those three elements that are necessary to maintain a fire. The tetrahydrogen part comes in where it says that a chemical chain reaction is needed, some type of chain reaction is needed to start the fire. And you can give an example of that. Petrol, gasoline has a very, very low boiling point. So the fumes alone can start a fire. If you were to light a match anywhere close to a gas can, and the fumes get close to that flame, a fire will start. However, if you get diesel, which has a very, very low boiling point or flash point, you could take a match and you could throw it into diesel and it will not light. Because diesel needs to get to boiling temperature first before it can get hot enough to start a fire. Fuel's boiling temperature is just below the ambient temperature, just below room temperature, so it's always in a volatile state. That's why they always tell you never smoke or use a lighter close to any gas station. So the chemical that starts the fire or the fuel of that fire is also important, and these things you need to understand, right? So unless you're walking around with gas cans, you want them try it. You should ever come into that situation. I just want to beg you that fire is a very serious thing. Don't try to start your fire or try to out a fire. I'm just saying these things in the event you need assistance. There are many programs out there, or you could, if there are any youth groups, churches, community groups, charities that want to learn about fire, you could contact the Barbados Fire Service. They also do training. And there are a few small bodies throughout the island that do training for cooperative groups, for youth groups, for churches. You could just call Barbados Fire Service and ask them for direction. And you could go from there. Or you could use the World Wide Web, www, and find out who in the island does this training. So that was the fire triangle or fire tetrahydrogen. We also went through the classes of fire. The ones that are predominantly used in Barbados is alpha, class A. We said that is paper, wood, cloth, trash, that sort of stuff. Ordinary materials. Usually use smoke or ashes. We had class B. I always remember bottles, so flammable liquids, things that are going into bottles, gas, thinners, oil, paint, that sort of stuff. Class C, fires, electrical. Remember C for circuits. So electrical fires is class C. Class D are metals. Remember, a very dangerous one is magnesium. So when metals are burning, that's a class D, and class K, as in cooking, like vegetable oils, animal oils, and fats, that sort of stuff, things that happen that you will use inside the kitchen, right? Class K fire. Then we talked about the extinguishers we use on the island. Are most frequently recognized is the ABC. You will say on the extinguisher, it will say ABC. It means it fights class A, class B, and class C fires. There are foam sprays, there's water, there's carbon dioxide, and there's also wet chemicals. Generally, all of these handheld extinguishers operate the same way. They have a nozzle, they have a flange you press. You have to remove a pin that keeps the flange from pressing, so you can't play with them and accidentally send them off. Some of them, like the carbon dioxide one, will have a cone, a big cone that we use to direct the atomized carbon dioxide. But all the rest will have a regular hose. You just point it at the base of the fire. You move left to right or whichever, depends on the situation. But they are not toys, so be very serious. Remember that the aim of firefighting is to out the fire, so you don't want to spray at the top of the fire where the flame is. You're wasting your time. Remember, you want to get to where those three elements are, and those three elements are usually at the base of the fire. The other thing that you will see, sometimes you'll see firemen fighting the fire itself, and then some fighting what will look like the big flame, but that's not what they're doing. There's a technique called boundary cooling, and also a safety mechanism where they create an umbrella with water to protect their team. But that gets a little more technical. I'm not going to get into that anymore. So today's DIY was about firefighting. It was about understanding what is a fire, understanding how a fire starts, understanding the types of fires, understanding the elements imparted to start and maintain a fire, and how to identify the types of fire and how to be safe. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, safety is always key. Self, then property. So make sure you are safe in everything you do. And it is important that I say this one more time. The intent of this episode today was not to teach you how to fight fires. It's not to empower you to fight fires, but to give you an idea of what a fire is so you can understand what is going on and how to be safe in everything you do. If there's a situation and you have a fire, please, 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 please call the Barbados Fire Service. I think last year they mandated know that if you even want to burn garbage around your home, you need to get a permit for that. I'm all about that. I understand why. A lot of people start fires to burn trash around the house and they don't monitor it and they walk away and leave it, and that could easily cause catastrophe. So 5311 for the Barbados Fire Service. Always be safe. Thank you for joining me again today on Random Thoughts and Ideas with Jack. I am your host, Jack. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to talk to you on the next podcast. Have a great day, guys. I done know. I say what I had to say. I share my random thought with you. Tell me what you think, though. Tell me what you think. Make sense?